Let's dive into a massive puzzle at the heart of modern finance. How do we figure out what a company is actually worth? Because, as it turns out, the official books, they're only telling us a tiny, tiny fraction of the real story.
It all kicks off with this number, 5. Right now, the average company's market value is a whopping 5 times its official accounting book value. So think about that. If the books say a company is worth $1 billion, investors are out there paying $5 billion for it. So the big question is, where's that extra $4 billion of, phantom value even coming from?
Well, that huge difference is what we call the valuation gap. And in this first part, we are going to break down exactly what's hiding inside of it.
And this chart really just lays it all out, doesn't it? That 5x multiple is right here. A company's actual financial statements, what we call its book value, only account for about 20% of its market price, which means a staggering 80% of what investors are paying for is, well, something else entirely. It's value that traditional accounting just can't see.
Okay, so now let's zoom in on just that little 20% slice, the book value. Get this, 70% of that isn't even for physical things like factories or cash in the bank. Nope, it's for an intangible concept called goodwill, which is basically the premium a company pays for another company's brand, its reputation, its customers when they buy them out.
So that goodwill, it's really just a bet on the future. When you see these huge corporate acquisitions, most of the price they pay is based on this one single number in a spreadsheet called terminal value. And that number is supposed to represent all of a company's expected growth forever. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. A massive piece of a company's official value is literally based on an assumption of infinite growth.
And this right here, this brings us to the core of the problem. We are using accounting tools that were designed for the past to try and price a very, very uncertain future.
And this number really drives that point home, 32. That's the average price-to-earnings ratio for a company in the S&P 500. So what that means in plain English is, when you buy a stock today, you're paying upfront for 32 years of that company's future profits. You are literally making a 3-decade-long bet on that company's continued success. Which, of course, leads us to this really critical question. In a world with rapid climate change, with resource scarcity, with regulation shifting all the time, can a simple financial statement give you any real confidence about how a company will be doing 3 decades from now? Yeah, the answer is a pretty clear no way.
Now look, the market knew this was a huge problem, and for years companies tried to fill that information gap themselves, voluntarily. But that effort, as well-intentioned as it was, ended up creating a whole new kind of chaos.
And this is the perfect analogy for what happened. The world of sustainability reporting in the 2010s was just like business accounting back in the 1920s, before we had universal standards. Everybody just made up their own rules. One company might use Standard A, its biggest competitor might use Standard B, and a third company might just not use anything at all. The result? Total confusion, a messy alphabet soup of standards that made it absolutely impossible for investors to compare one company to another. So, to clean up this mess, the world really needed a single global language for sustainability, and that is where the ISSB enters the picture. The ISSB, or the International Sustainability Standards Board, was created with one very clear mission: to do for sustainability reporting what was done for financial accounting all those years ago. They're creating one single set of reliable, comparable standards so that investors anywhere in the world can make better, smarter decisions.
And their approach? It's actually really simple and logical. Step 1. Companies have to identify all their potential risks and opportunities, not just in their factories, but across their entire value chain, short, medium, and long term. Step 2. They use a common language to report all this info. And the result? You get data that is actually useful for making real decisions.
Okay, so this isn't just about some abstract rules on paper. Let's make this real. Let's look at what this actually means for real businesses that are facing real-world challenges. All right, take the Rhine River in Germany. For the last few summers, crazy heat waves have left the water levels so low that the massive shipping barges just have to stop. This isn't some far-off climate model. This is happening right now. It's a physical risk that's disrupting supply chains and actually driving up inflation. And that is exactly the kind of financial risk that old-school accounting completely misses. Or how about this example? A major tech company wants to power its AI data centers by restarting an old nuclear plant. Sounds like a good plan, maybe, but that plant was built back in 1968, and it was designed using river flow data from the 1960s.
So the ISSB standards force that company to ask a really important question. Given what we know about climate change, will this river even have enough water to cool that plant over the next 32 years? That is a multi-billion-dollar question that the old way of accounting would never, ever have forced them to ask.
So you might be thinking, okay, great idea, but is anyone actually doing this? The answer is yes. This isn't just a good idea on paper, it is rapidly becoming the new global norm.
In just a few short years, we're already talking about more than 40 jurisdictions around the world that have already committed to adopting these new standards. The momentum is incredible.
And we're not talking about small economies here. Together, all those jurisdictions represent about 60% of the entire world's GDP. This is a truly seismic shift, and it's happening at lightning speed.
And what's so cool about this is that it's a truly global and inclusive movement. I mean, look at this list. It's not just the G7 economies like Canada and Japan. It's emerging powerhouses like Nigeria and Brazil, and countries like Sri Lanka and Turkey. This is a brand new language for business, and it's being adopted by the global North and the global South, all at the same time. So at the end of the day, the ultimate goal here is simple, but it's really powerful. Provide better information so that everyone, investors, companies, you, me, can make better, more resilient decisions. It's about future-proofing not just the capital markets, but really the entire global economy.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought. You know, in today's turbulent world, you hear some people say that big geopolitical concerns are pushing sustainability aside. But I think the real question is this: aren't these geopolitical tensions actually a multiplier for sustainability risks? I mean, think about supply chains getting disrupted by a conflict, or countries competing over water. In a world that just keeps getting more and more uncertain, isn't having a clear, common language for resilience more critical than it has ever been?